Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? What's up, USC Trojan fans? Feels weird, a little different opening the show. No coach tonight. He's on the mend. Prayers up for coach, a little sick. Talked to him today, though. He's doing all right. But just taking the week off to recover. But we got a great show for you today and a great cast of characters, as always. I guess we can call it a different tripod. At the tripod, just the Holy Triumphant, maybe we'll call this one.
There we go.
But as always, the co-host with the most is my man, Jamal Madman Modney. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Great to see you, Rye. I'm so happy to have Tim and Rye. I mean, this is a new holy triumvirate. I'm excited about today.
Yeah, we can call ourselves Rush, I guess. The true holy triumphant. But Tim, what's up, man? Thanks as always for jumping on with us. Good seeing you.
Oh, love being here. Have a great time. I always like being here because I get to hear news from you, Ryan. Instead of being on Twitter, I could actually ask you questions right to your face. That was fun.
There we go. Always good. So, show as always, real quick, brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. All the best money lines, odds, every sport you can think of is at BetOnline. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. Tell them the LAFB network sent you. So, gentlemen, it's a wild, wild college football world we live in. The transfer portal is ever flowing. The transfer portal giveth and it taketh away. And so far for the Trojans, it has done nothing but take. They'll add some guys eventually, but down to 20 players now have entered the portal. The big ones today, the Branch brothers, both Zachariah and Zion Branch, hit the portal. I'll toss to you guys. I will say it was not unexpected, but still obviously a loss in terms of production and just talent and ceiling level of these guys. But Madman, I'll start with you. Like when officially heard this, were you surprised? What were your thoughts, and what's just kind of your state of mind on transfer portal right now?
Yeah, right. It's a great question. I was disappointed. I was sad, but because the Branch brothers just sort of independent of football, and we've sort of talked about this on this show over several weeks and months. Just they epitomize what the kind of ambassadorship of what it means to be a Trojan, is, right? When you sort of look at Tommy and what's inscribed under Tommy about kind of the characteristics of what makes a great Trojan, the Branch brothers epitomize all of that. And so in that regard, I was very, very sad to see this sort of chapter end for them, and certainly wish them nothing but wild success in their next stops and in their next chapters. But in terms of on the field, Ryan, Tim, I can't say that I was surprised because, we had talked about this quite a bit we had this quintet of wide receivers at the end of the season, lot, it's a log jam, a lot of mouths to feed. There's a lot of talent there. And we had talked a lot about, 4 of these guys kind of came in together as freshmen and sophomores. And those first 2 years, it's all sort of fun in games. It's a lot of camaraderie. Once you sort of get to that junior season, then things become very real in terms of time left in college, prospects for the NFL, the nil dollars start going way up. And so it transfers from just a game to then more of a business. And we were sort of at that inflection point. And then when you sort of overlay that with getting the 3-game audition from Jaden Maeva and kind of understanding more of his play stylistically, what he likes to do. He's a big, downfield shots type of quarterback, a lot of 50-50 balls. So you're really looking at those wide receivers that are big, wide catch radius, can sort of get separation, physical, and sort of can battle corners for those balls. And Branch just didn't quite fit that mold. And I think the combination of that with, we can call it a sophomore slump, but he just never felt right this year in terms of scheme, statistically, the touches, the speed even. There was a lot of conversation of perhaps did he put on too much weight in the offseason, that sort of slowed him down a bit. It was sort of that in-between spot where he put on more weight, but was it enough to make him significantly stronger versus like lose the speed? So a lot of sort of trade-offs there in that regard. It just never felt right. And then I think the writing was on the wall when you saw Lemon kind of take over for him in terms of the kickoffs as well, right? And let's not forget, Branch was an All-American last year, but he wasn't an All-American as a wide receiver. He was All-American as a special teamer. And so when that kind of preeminent position gets taken from you, feels like really the writing is on the wall. So disappointed, Rye. Can't say that I was surprised. Tactically, though, I think given Maeva's style, as much as it sort of pains me to say this, I don't think it's going to be sort of a significant loss on the field in terms of what Maeva wants to do. But I think zooming back strategically, I think the concern now is, all of the 5 stars from the last 2 years in terms of recruiting cycle have transferred out. 10 of the top 15 rated prospects of the last 2 classes between 22 and 23 have now transferred out. And now when you factor in that quintet of wide receivers, you have Hudson gone, Branch gone. The shocker is Deuce, because he sort of fits with everything that Maeva wants to do, and he's still left. And I think what was a little bit alarming there is when he said he didn't feel like he was getting the right development. And so that's, I think, strategically the bigger questions moving forward. And I'm sure we'll get to this, but the 2 guys now I've got my eye on, Rye, in terms of transfer portal or not, is Jacoby Lane. Felt like he was maybe going to go with Miller Moss. Wherever Moss went, he would go. Now that Moss is with Louisville, I don't know if he sort of resonates with Louisville. It felt like if maybe Miller Moss went to Michigan, it would have been sort of a no-brainer. It'll be interesting to see what Jacoby Lane does, and I know we're sticking with wide receivers, but the other guy I've got my eye on is Gentry. I'm not sure with the end situation. So lot to unpack there. Disappointed, but can't say I'm completely surprised.
Yeah, definitely. All great points. Tim, I'll toss it to you. Your kind of just thoughts on both Branch brothers.
I'm not sure if he left. I think that, Jamal, you make this really easy because you basically just said everything that I've been saying on Twitter. I'm glad you get it. A lot of fans on Twitter don't understand the difference between a great Trojan and a Trojan great. And like what you said, I know Ryan, the way these gentlemen comport themselves after practice, after games, they're just the epitome of what it means to be a Trojan. Jamal, you nailed that. And it's a shame, you have a guy like Branch catching a lot of trouble because he got a lot of targets and he had some issues as a receiver, like you both alluded to. And it just seems like a lot of redundancy. Do you know what I mean? You brought up a great point about Deuce Robinson. Deuce Robinson was that mold that you're talking about. Whereas it seems like Lemon and Branch kind of overlap a lot, and what they do very well. And then, you have Jay Farrow came in. He can stretch the field speed-wise. Romero Ison, Xavier Jordan, these guys. And then with Deuce Robinson, you got a big guy like Corey Sims. I mean, so it looks like it's not like it's panic time on any of this. I mean, if you asked me in the beginning, 3 years ago, I thought it was going to be great. It'd be Camelot. These 4 guys could play for 3 years together and all go to the NFL together. But we got to realize that, these guys want to eat. It's not just as much about NIL or about development, whatever. It's also, the reality is you have 4 guys who have NFL talent, and it's going to be difficult for all 4 of them to do that on the same field. There just aren't enough footballs. So I think this probably was inevitable that you were not going to keep 4 of these guys on the same team. It's just when you add it to the Joyner situation, it just seems like a lot of guys are going that are starters. And then Ryan, you and I talked off Mike about this, but it just seems like USC is losing a lot of proven production and starters. And there's more rumors out there. And so I'm really beginning to wonder, is everything in the NIL situation where it should be? And that could be a conversation for later, but it does kind of give you a little bit of doubt that everything, now that is the money there, fine. If the money's there, where's the management? But it just seems like USC is really taking a big PR hit. And that's maybe something we could talk about later as well, because there's a lot of bad press out right now about USC just, in a dumpster fire. And that's the last thing you want right now during this portal season, that your program is in the dumpster. Yeah.
I think we've learned that PR is the optics don't look good very often lately for SC. And it's something that needs to be addressed. Obviously it hasn't. And I mean, the only thing I'll add, cause I agree with all those and I don't want to just, belabor the points, but I totally agree. Love Zach Branch. Loved what his ceiling was. It's unfortunate that, after freshman year, we were all talking like, could this be a Heisman candidate in a year or two? Like, are we talking number 5? Are we talking like maybe a jersey in the rafters? And this year, just a complete downfall in that, whether that was coaching, whether that was scheme, whether that was on him, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, it didn't transpire. But when you look at that, just looking forward to the future on field wise, I agree. I don't really think this is a big loss. And in reality, if we're talking dollars, he was the 3rd most expensive Trojan behind Bear Alexander and Miller Moss. Now all 3 of those guys are gone. So when you're in this age of NIL, whatever way you want to spin it or look at it, that is money now that they can allocate elsewhere, whether it be other positions or to keep Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane happy, because it was going to be tough to keep all 4. In terms of Zion, like, he may actually be the bigger loss in terms of play on the field. When you look at that secondary, if Kamari Ramsey does end up declaring for the draft, and we've talked about this, but then that means the Trojan will lose every single starter in the secondary. And while Branch had trouble staying healthy, he would have been slotted in as a potential starter next year or a significant role player regardless. So he may be actually the bigger loss in terms of play. Now, we haven't seen the production from him, but obviously the talent was there and play style was there that could have potentially fit. So that may be seen as a loss. Obviously, they will look to add in the portal and some of these young guys coming up, but that's a position group that actually needs players because they do not have any starters returning. Whereas the receivers room, even losing some of these is tough. I agree. Deuce was the big surprise, but I think even in this offense, you're going to have production from the receivers. And the last thing I'll say is, and kind of just to double click on some of both what you said, like it is so hard now to keep premier talent at any position, but especially receiver in this, not just day and age of NIL and transfer portal, but as you guys alluded to, like this being year 3, needing to put that on tape for the NFL level, and 500 yards and a touchdown, that's not getting you drafted in the first round. Like you've got to have that 1,000 plus, those 80 to 90 catches. When you look at the elite rooms of the past of LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, a lot of those rooms, they were kind of staggered. They had like 1 or 2 elite guys in each class. So each guy had their year to shine. Yeah. This was all 4 in the same class, and all 4 not redshirted. They had enough reps or whatever. I think Lane maybe could have got a redshirt last year. But so I think it also changes your recruiting strategy now, knowing like, all right, we probably can't just target all 4 of these, and whether that had to go into play with Jerome Miles decommitting, I think that was more of an NIL play to take his money and go towards Jakeem Stewart. That's another conversation, but I think it changes like, okay, do we need to get 4 every cycle, or do we need to get 2 to 3? And then that way we can stagger those a little bit, have our featured guys. Jamal, you've talked a lot over the last 2 years of like, who's your top dog? Who is the top receiver taking those reps? Now trying to, make lemonade out of lemons here, pun intended as well. Now you look at Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane as your 2 top dogs. These are your dogs, have some depth pieces. Last year you had 6 dogs and you had your tight end and Lake McCree. It was just too much. And guys, as much as they said the right things, as much as they loved each other, end of the day, they do got to eat, because receiver is the most position that requires the most in order to get production, because you got to get the football. And so, I hope the best for both Branch brothers, but for Zachariah to kind of found his footing and become that elite receiver that he thought he would be. I don't know if you guys have comments before we move on.
No, Ryan, I mean, I think really well said. The one thing I'll just add is, so much of the conversation today has been around Zachariah leaving, and, rightfully so. What a sort of headliner he was. I mean, our mouths were salivating in that San Jose State game, if we all recall, with the 2 touchdowns, and him being on the cover of the college football video game, and just being the Branch brothers being sort of Jordan Brand as individual athletes, which was such a rarity. I mean, there was just so much with Zachariah kind of being the headliner of the brothers in terms of notoriety that they got in the offseason, that I think there was also sort of a weight of expectations. And I think given that weight of expectations, it also felt at times that he was being force-fed the ball, that it was also almost like, hey, we've got to get Branch 8 to 10 touches a game, whether that fits within the flow of the offense, down, distance, score, time, number of possessions, be damned. We got to find a way to kind of get him touches. And it just seemed like it was sort of throwing the offense out of rhythm. And I think it threw him off rhythm as well. I mean, I think there were some key moments. There were some drops. It was tough for him to kind of get separation. So I think this is one of those situations where it's potentially a win-win for both USC as well as Zach Branch to kind of have a new chapter there. But I think the Zion one, at least in terms of on the field for 2025, is the greater impact. And I think we sort of talked about it with the secondary when you sort of look at Jalen Smith and Covington and Greedy Vance Jr., and I gotta believe Kamari Ramsey's going pro, just given where he is in terms of draft stock, and just the lack of guarantee that you have with injury, with the next wave of talent in college football. You got to kind of take your shot when you do. Zion Branch did a lot of the things that Kamari Ramsey did this year. Kamari Ramsey sort of came in as a guy who was an extremely cerebral player, really knew how to sort of call out defensive formations on that back end, really be kind of the quarterback of the back end of the defense. He had really exceptional ball skills. But where I think he really separated this year was his ability to stuff the run, get in the box, make some tough tackles, bring running backs down, and really be in some very physical one-on-one situations in the flat with various receivers and win those battles. And I think when you think about Zion Branch, you think of a very similar skill set. I don't think Branch quite had the ball skills that Ramsey did, but in terms of the other two elements, you could have definitely seen him be a terrific run-stopping safety and also sort of call out the defense from the back end. And when you think about what D'Anton Lynn's system is sort of predicated on, which is disguise and the ability to be able to generate pressure with your front four, and particularly with an edge rusher that you can kind of move around all over the field and then create that zone shell where you're always sort of +1 in space to really sort of overwhelm offenses, the opportunity to sort of take those disguises, have your safety play, a high look and sort of cover the deep ball, but then also be able to dive in and get into the box. Those were the kind of players that would really succeed in the D'Anton Lynn system. So we're probably going to miss Zion more than we miss Zach for 2025, but wish them both the best. And all this means is more work in terms of the transfer portal and recruiting here for Lincoln Riley and company.
Yeah, for all those reasons, but he's more of a natural box safety than Kamari. Kamari is 6 foot, barely 200 pounds. You look at a guy like Zion, 6'2", 210.
Yep.
Really is that true box safety. And big. I mean, when he has been in games, some of the hits he's laid, not the fact that Kamari Ramsey didn't have the hit of the season with that hit in the flat, but I mean, just the ability to lay the wood at the size he has. He is that true box safety that you're talking about, Jamal. And losing him, I mean, I had him penciled in as the other safety. Kamari Ramsey, like you kind of alluded to it, because the pass rush is so bad, he didn't get to. Ramsey does have those elite, I believe, skills, right? And it might transfer and then ready for enough film, probably from UCLA, but he didn't really show it. And this year, I mean, I'm holding out hope because we don't know. We've heard some guys making mock drafts, but he hasn't received his grade yet, has he? As far as a day one, kind of guy. So I'm really hoping that maybe he looks at the fact that the improved pass rush might allow him to get some of those stats. I think he has the ability. I mean, I agree with you guys. I'm just hoping at this point, really. But losing both of those guys leaves a huge hole in the secondary, which is already going to be, as we talked about, a very inexperienced secondary. So, yeah, we have some young talent, but none of it's proven. So that's the scary part.
Yeah, it's an interesting, from a coaching's perspective, and I'd be curious what coach would have to say on this, but you always want the best success for your players. And I've heard other coaches say they have a real conversation in the season, hey, this is your time to go to the draft. We think you can get this grade by scouts we've talked to. We think you can get this level, but then also being bro, we need you back. You got eligibility. You will be the face of our defense. We need you to run this secondary and be here, especially now with Zion gone. And maybe, I mean, I haven't heard anything on this, so this is just me just thinking out loud now, but maybe they've had a conversation with the Kamari and he said he is coming back. And so maybe that made their conversation with Zion Branch a little easier, saying okay, well, we are not pigeonholed to pay you, or if there was an IL talks or whatever, but who knows about that. But I'm sure they've had conversations, and everything we know at this point is that Ramsey is playing in the bowl game, but we have not heard too much other than that. Tim, go ahead.
Well, and DJ Harvey, who's Ramsey's buddy, that doesn't hurt. There's little kind of bird whistles, like you just said, that are out there where it's kind of I'm not saying this is business. He's not going to stay because he's going to play with his buddy. It's not like that. But it doesn't hurt the fact that, DJ Harvey, who's very close to Ramsey, is now going to be on the team. I mean, those things do add up. But that's a great point, Ryan. I didn't think about the fact that, maybe they were a little more relaxed about their conversation with the Branch brothers, knowing that they may have Kamari for another year. Yeah, it's good. It'd be good to find out next couple of weeks, obviously.
Let me ask you guys this before we move on to Josh Henson, just since we're on the secondary and we're talking NIL, and if we want, we can talk a little state of NIL, but I feel like we end up divulging on that every single show, so I don't know how much more we could dive down that.
Right, we have 9 months for that.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm we'll just get through the actual news, but because we haven't talked since it happened on Saturday or Sunday, but the big portal guy they got out of UCF, Chosen Johnson, is it Chazen Johnson?
Yeah.
Yep.
Chazen Johnson, who commits and then 2 days later then ends up signing with SMU. Just what were your guys' thoughts on that? Jamal, I'll start with you.
I mean, I was chuckling because Coach and I, our sort of second to last episode, we were talking about how much money SMU actually has and how much money there is down in that Dallas-Fort Worth area, and that SMU is going to be a serious player now moving forward. I don't think people realize this is going to be a team that's going to be perennial conference championship contender in the ACC with the type of resources they had. So it was so ironic that Johnson sort of picked SMU 2 days after SC, because also just sort of when you talk about universities and who do you sort of compare USC to as sort of a university between alumni base, school spirit, just sort of overall brand and ethos, the two schools that always come to mind are SMU and the University of Miami. And so it's just sort of ironic that, he picked USC South, if you will. But, that's sort of the anecdotal reaction. We're just in a world here, guys. I mean, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but this is completely unsustainable. I mean, how we can sort of be in a world here where free agency is 24/7, 365, and you add to the fact that no contract is enforceable, and you add to the fact that, the team doesn't even have your rights. We've talked about this. This is sort of the worst iteration of college athletics and the worst iteration of professional athletics. I mean, you're taking the worst of both worlds and putting it together, and that's where you are right now. And so it just makes it so much more difficult to be able to convey culture, history, tradition, values, the holistic student-athlete experience. We are getting so transactional, where this is so much about dollars and cents, that we really are staring at the barrel of Major League Baseball, where if you're not the Dodgers and the Red Sox and the Yankees and the Mets, who are you? And I think that's sort of the question existentially that USC football is starting to sort of ask itself, that if you're not Texas and Oregon and Georgia and et cetera, in terms of the NIL budgets, like, what are you, who are you, and what exactly is sort of a success strategy moving forward?
Yeah, Jamal, is Billy Bean available for USC? Because we're going to need a GM. It's funny when you have an SMU that could basically say, TV, oh no, we're good. We don't need TV money. You keep your TV money. We have enough Texas oil money to fund everything we do here at the school. That's the problem you're going to have. I got heat from a school that they told me that when I said this is your window. Someone clipped what I said out of context, but I said, no, if there's a time for Oregon to win this Wild West, I'm not crapping on them. I'm envious that they're taking advantage of the situation. This is their window. This is the perfect opportunity for certain schools, Texas A&M, to really make a run where they may not be able to do it in the future when this thing gets normalized. And I'm really hoping it does get normalized, because let's face it, USC does not seem like they have the forward-thinking people at the highest levels that are keeping up with how to game this system, I guess is the best way you could say it. But yeah, I'm going to be happy when things get normal, because it's losing its flavor. And I compare like the apt thing with the baseball. But what I'm worried about is we won't be MLB. We're going to be minor league baseball. And no one really watches minor league baseball. So college football's got to watch out.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we'll do this an off-season episode, go all down this, but essentially, it feels like SC right now, because everything we've heard is they have the money, but it feels like they're still running their operations like an old school college football program, and you have to run it like an NFL team now. Like, you have to have a front office, and they're just not fully embracing that from what we've heard. But I think that'll be a fun discussion to really.
And Tim, the one thing I'll add, and sorry to cut you off, I'll take 30 seconds here. The window, Tim, I completely agree with you. The Phil Knight window here for Oregon, certainly. The caveat, though, of course, is, A, does the sport actually get normalized? That's number one, is the fear. B is, a guy like Phil Knight, does he take part of his net worth and just say, hey, as part of my will, this is going to the University of Oregon, and here's the endowment to be set up for success for the next 15 or 20 years? And then C, is there a similar window of concern for USC? Because, we are getting to a phase where the McKay era donors, which, let's be honest, those are the vast majority of donors and boosters at USC, where the McKay era donors are getting to a point where they're aging out and the kids don't share the same passion, and they've already sort of given their money and they're sort of fading away. So is the USC pipeline of donors gonna run dry here in the next 3, 4, 5 years. So that's why it's just so critical to be able to figure this out and become competitive at an elite level, because I think it's, there's a number of different windows here at play where it's really paramount for success here in the near term.
My God, we're not identical twins, but you and I are twins at birth. Literally everything I say and you say are things that conversations I've been having. The one thing is the B in there. I was talking more about, I do think that your thing with Phil Knight, there will be an endowment. I don't mean the window for Phil Knight. I mean the ability. I do think that they will have to. It's not sustainable. They're going to have to close this up somehow, somewhere. To what degree, we don't know. But right now, where it's just free reign, where it's just, look, you got money, you can build. Let's face it, the incredible roster that Oregon has been able to do. This didn't happen last year or this year. They've been building this roster, and it's sustainable. It's not going anywhere. They're the number 2 class this year. So I mean, it's amazing what they're doing. I knock the Ducks because they're the Ducks, but I mean, what they're doing is amazing, and it's not ending until there are some guardrails put on this. And at some point, I think there has to be, because it isn't sustainable. The way the free agencies just is happening, the whole thing with this warehouse, the clearinghouse. I don't know how mechanically they're going to do that. I don't know, but they do it in the NFL. So there's a model for it. So I'm hoping that comes to college football. So because they are losing people, and the biggest point, I just want to double up on that point about the McKay era donor getting turned off by the way football is going. That's happening more than people know, at least from the people, because my crowd's a pretty old crowd over at the other place I'm at. And I'm telling you, they absolutely are in my DMs and comments in our comment section talking about, this isn't football, I'm out. Yeah. Now imagine the donors.
Yeah. What they need, I guess, is young alumni wives that just marry billionaires like Michigan. Right? and you got to bankroll it that way. But yeah, it's crazy, man. Like, I mean, I've heard specifically to today's news, but I mean, coaches have said it of other programs about like agents literally searching for new teams mid-season, like agents of kids calling other programs like, hey, we'll hit the portal in 2 months. How much are you paying? I mean, that's happening so much. And it's just the fact that that's okay right now is a huge issue. So we should do
one more thing. I know it's one more thing. I was talking earlier this year about how we were talking about, we're the big bad wolf and we're going after stealing the Jordan Addisons, right? Stepping in and grabbing people. You guys, it seems like that's happened to USC now. And that's another thing. It's another layer of worry that I'm having is, I could go into it, but my number one thing, if you're a program, number one now in NIL, you protect your roster. And it looks like that we can't even do that right now. So.
Well, Tim, my biggest concern, and Brian, I promise this will be my last point, and we'll get to the other side of it. But what is USC's competitive advantage now? If it's not money, right? Mm-hmm. If you're taking money out of the equation, think about all of the competitive advantages that existed in the Pete era. All of those are gone now, right? Pete's big thing was access and geography. Now, that is no longer the case. You don't have to be in LA to be a superstar. You don't have to be in LA to be exposed to celebrities and get a broadcasting career going, start up branding, all of these other things the way you did before. Because remember, in 02 to 08, there was no social media and there was no smartphones. I mean, think about it. The last time USC was truly elite was pre-iPhone and pre-Twitter and pre-Instagram. And so now you're in this world of social and mobile, and I don't have to be at USC anymore to be a big star. I can be Shedeur Sanders in Boulder, Colorado, and make $6.2 million a year in NIL and fly in for the Laker game and hang out with LeBron, for 20 minutes before tip-off, and then fly back and play where I need to play. So if it's no longer access, and it's no longer celebrity, and it's no longer geography, what is the competitive advantage moving forward? It sort of has to be money. So if you're not the big bad spender, what are you? And I think that's really the existential conversation that is probably having and needs to be happening more of moving forward.
Ryan, one thing I jump in. Yes, well, there's one thing I always talked about this.
Damn, I love you.
I love you too, man. LA is not for a lot of people because it's expensive. But you know what is really good for? Rich people. And I'll tell you what, if you've got $300,000 a year in your pocket, I want to live in LA and not Lincoln, not Eugene, not a lot of these places. I want to live, by Manhattan Beach. I want to be able to do the things, not have to fly in for a Laker game. I want to walk across the street and go to a Laker game. So, I mean, there is still some of that, but yes, to the vast majority of what you spoke to, absolutely has narrowed it down. And Shedeur and what they're doing at Colorado, they showed they did at Colorado, is the perfect example.
Yeah, and we'll tease this because this will be a deep dive, but there's still an NIL issue at USC, and it's not necessarily money, it's the way it's being used and allocated and segmented and whatnot, and that goes into the whole front office issue and whatnot. But we can dive into that, and you guys can just keep going if you want, because I know I have a short clock, but I want to at least mention really quick, Josh Henson, offensive line coach, out now, not fired or anything, but hired by Purdue as the new offensive coordinator. He will be calling plays. So for those SC fans, well, wasn't he like the offensive coordinator at USC? Obviously, he did not call the plays, so he gets the play calling title and duties at Purdue. So now SC in this transfer portal time, after the class just committed, are at another position coach. They're in the midst of potentially hiring a linebacker coach here soon. And now they got to go to the board with the offensive line coach. So Jamal, I'll just go to you. Just your thoughts on, I mean, do you think this is a big loss? Do you think it's actually maybe a benefit to kind of get some fresh blood in here? Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, Henson was a bit of a polarizing figure at the start of the season, right? I mean, particularly with some of the offensive line struggles, I think, that was able to sort of turn. I mean, Page's evolution in the second half of the season and guys kind of felt more comfortable, and I think there was more continuity from a unit standpoint. So I think Henson did a credible job as offensive line coach this year. Having said that, I don't know if he is this one-of-one special mind position coach that if you lose, everything is sort of dire. And on the flip side, I don't think he was terrible by any stretch of the imagination. I think he was right there in between. So I think there'll be an opportunity for USC to sort of fill that gap and I think do it effectively. I think for Henson, this is a tremendous opportunity. I mean, to go from offensive line coach to be able to be offensive coordinator. And frankly, he's really sort of set up for success. I mean, Purdue went 1-11 last year. I mean, so
can't be worse.
The only place the arrow can go here is up. So, I mean, congratulations to Henson. This is sort of a no-brainer opportunity for him that you have to take. I think SC will fall on their feet, and it's a great opportunity for Henson. Again, dare I say, another sort of win-win situation.
Yeah, I agree. But go ahead, Tim, and then I'll give my thoughts.
No, I'm same thing. I kept, people always wanted to, close the book on Josh Henson after year one, then year two. I mean, after year one, it wasn't really his recruits. He did a great job kind of cobbling that together with a great veteran group that had a lot of reps. And then we saw that was it. That was Clay Helton's contribution to USC football trenches going forward. You saw the huge drop off in talent and experience in the following year. They tried to, again, really heavily portal it. And it just looks terrible. I got to be honest, I was kind of jumping off the wagon when he was just rotating guys left and right. Just seemed like they couldn't get it figured out throughout the whole season. But like Jamal just said, the development of Elijah Page is evident. Him coming around, making that jump to his second year. The idea in watching Pregnon, who was a talented guy when he came in, but absolutely now worked his way into an serious NFL prospect, and the rest of the line. I'm hoping they keep this class together because he finally did the other part I was worried about. Because initially we're just getting these 3-star. We had Elijah Page as a 4-star, but everyone else was just kind of like these development pieces. He started to pull in the guys like an Aaron Dunn, right? These really talented guys. I want to see what they could do. I want to see what he do with Hayden Treater, who's a guy who I think has all the ability. I mean, he's going to be amazing at USC. The timing sucks again, but this is when this happens to all programs. You'll lose a coach this time of year. It just happens. That's why right now having this portal right now in this time period, it just doesn't, with the early signing period and the portal right this time of the year, it just seems a bit broken. They got to fix that. I just think it's not the right time to have roster movement when you're going to have a lot of coaching change right after that early signing period begins, and then also going into this part of the portal season. I think USC needs to not what it's done in the past. I think they act quickly because as soon as this bowl season's over and then the next portal season opens up, they have to be ready and established and ready to go to bring in those pieces before it ends, because those guys will have 5 days, I think, at the end of the bowl season. That 5 days, I'm telling you guys, line is where people stack talent, and that talent says, I'm tired of being stuck behind. I want my NIL. and there's going to be some faces, and USC absolutely needs difference makers on both lines, right? And so on the offensive line, they're going to have to, I really do believe we have to get that experienced. I do think center. I love Killian O'Connor. I love Kill Switch. We need to upgrade at center. And we've been saying for years now, we need a left tackle. I'm sorry, left tackle. We're going to need a right tackle because I think Elijah Page is that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys said it all. Timing obviously is never ideal, but that's every program goes through it. Best of luck to Henson. I thought he did a fantastic job this year. Like you guys said, developing it, after that Michigan game, it was like, everyone's like, fire this guy, get him out of here. Just what is going on? And just the improvement from Michigan till the end of the season, when you go up against the defensive lines of Notre Dame and Nebraska and Wisconsin. And, it was evident how much had improved from that point. So I think that was great. As long as they don't lose the Elijah Pays, the Alani Noahs, the guys of this 25 class, as you mentioned, Dunn, the guys of the 24 class, I think they'll be okay. I'm really curious to see who they will target. I think there's an opportunity potentially just to promote Zach Henson from tight end coach to offensive line coach, who played O-line and coached O-line at Tulsa. That could certainly happen, but obviously there'll be some other names I think they'll target, which we'll discuss, later down the line. But, yeah, another big news day for USC. And the last thing I'll say, and then you guys, if there's anything else you want to sum up, but, if we spin anything, glass half full, I guess, just looking at money wise, and we mentioned it with Moss, and, we know Bear's been gone for a long time, but Moss, Bear, and the Branch brothers were the four most expensive players on this roster. We just mentioned with Henson, like, you got to go and spend money in the portal for trenches this year. I mean, you're losing 3 starters this year. And as long as, Page and Noah are back, you still got to fill 3 spots potentially with portal guys. And so you got to go spend. And now they should have some cash to spend by saving on that front. So last thing I'll say there. Anything else?
No, Ryan, I think this is also where the economics of NIL get very, very interesting from a behavioral economic standpoint, because, and I agree with all what you guys are saying of, okay, we have deficiencies on the offensive line. We all know that, Pregnon's leaving, Monheim's leaving, we lost Murphy. And so the natural predisposition is to say, let's go spend money on new guys, where sometimes you leave your existing guys, you sort of take them for granted. And I think it's going to be really fascinating. Tim, you said they're going to have to act swiftly on this offensive line hire, because for precisely the reasons we just talked about, Page developed with Henson, so there's a loyalty there. And so if they drag their feet on this hire, or they get somebody that maybe Page isn't jiving with, you either got to pay him more to sort of keep him happy, or you risk losing Page in the next portal window. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see the dynamic between the front office and Elijah Page. Because if I just lost the coach that really kind of helped me turn the corner, you better bring somebody in that's as good or better, or someone that really sort of jives with me. Otherwise, I'm going to be sort of looking for my options, because now I've just demonstrated my worth over the course of a 7-8 game period. And given, the preeminence of that position from a tackle perspective, everybody needs a tackle. His market is going to be massive. So we got to keep an eye on Elijah Page and how this is sort of handled, because it's very delicate.
I'll go fast because we have our hard cap on the show. If Henson can recruit like he's been recruiting at tight end on the O-line, sign me up. I'll take him right now.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be the big question. So it's going to be fascinating. But gentlemen, fun as always. We got plenty more. It's going to be I know Coach always says he hates the offseason, but there's really a ton to talk about in the offseason. I mean, it's almost more to talk about sometimes than in season. So for Tim Pregley, Jamal, Madman, appreciate you both. Everyone have a great day, and we'll talk to you all in the next episode.